Welcome to the Tech Ed Podcast, where we visit with leaders who are shaping, innovating, and disrupting technical education. People who are not afraid to think differently, not afraid to try something new, all with the goal of securing the American dream for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent. Welcome into the Tech Ed Podcast. I am Matt Kirkner, your host. You know, one of the things that I love about working in the field of technical education is that there are so many people who do this for reasons bigger than themselves. A lot of us have had jobs where it's a way of earning a living, it's a way of supporting our family, and we have that too in technical education. But so many of us get into this important work because we feel like we're doing something really, really important for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent. My guest today is somebody who I know does that because I've had the opportunity to work with him on numerous projects. He is doing this for all the right reasons. His name is Dr. Roger Stanford. You're the president of Western Technical College. I know all about Western Technical College, but to some of our audience members, Roger, it may be a little bit new to them. So tell us a little bit about what makes Western such a special place.
You know, Western is part of the Wisconsin Technical College system. There's 16 colleges in our entire system, and we are a 2-year community college, but we really are a technical college. I think what makes us unique, West Central Wisconsin, it's an absolute beautiful, great place to be, but we are really focused on technical education. It's our passion, it's who we are. But if you say, okay, you're focused on technical education, what is your other focus? What is most important? And that is that we're open access and we serve all students. We take everybody and we're focused on helping them get into the workforce. And I'm absolutely passionate about that. And I can say, yeah, most colleges maybe talk about that. I think we live that, whether that's healthcare, whether that's business, agriculture, or advanced manufacturing. We want to help the businesses in our region thrive, and we want to help the percentage of people that are in the workforce. We want to help some of the people that have struggled to find their path the right way. And Western is really good at it. We do it because we provide so many services and supports that help people that are either working or just struggling make it. And that's what makes us different is we are all in on helping somebody start and then complete and get a job.
So much of that is what makes Western such an important place and such a unique place. There's something I think that makes you unique among presidents of technical and community colleges. I don't know how many of them have the extensive military experience that you have. You're a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, but would love to hear a little bit about that part of your career pathway as we begin our discussion.
I started when I was pretty young in the military. It's just a great place to grow up, right? So we know that it helps you grow up. But as far as where my leadership and stuff was, and I worked actually in policy. So, early on, I was working a lot with commanders and high level officials working on policy, regulations. There's a right way to say something, the right way to publish it, and the right way to get things done. So I got to work with a lot of great leaders that just modeled beautiful things to me. And I was active duty, and then I had the pleasure to be reserved for a lot of years. And then in the reserves, naturally, I was a training officer. So it was all about helping others get the skills they need, which certainly ties to what I do every single day today. So I kind of had a natural piece going in there. But I loved my opportunity and my time in the service. It was a blessing.
Staying on that topic of training as it relates to the military, I've employed numerous veterans, probably hundreds of veterans over the course of my career in manufacturing. Huge believer in helping those who have served our country in that way, who have protected our freedom, to find a way into the workforce when their time in military service has come to an end, find a way to civilian life. That can be easier for some than others. And I can tell you from experience that in as much as the military equips the workforce and individuals serving in the military with incredible job skills and incredible abilities and competencies that have incredible value once they get to the workforce, there are some differences between the private sector and civilian life and working in the military as well. I would love for you to just share a little bit with our audience how Western, first of all, helps military veterans transition into civilian life, and specifically as it relates to Operation Next and the great work you're doing there.
We are in a part of the state that happens to have a tremendous amount of veterans and active and reserve because of Fort McCoy and because of the Air Force Base. So, we have over 1,000 military connected families tied to Western every single year. And so it's a natural place that program came to because it's It's something we're good at, and we're recognized as a great place for veterans to be, but that's very intentional. Like, you really have to understand what it means to assimilate from a military to the civilian. You have to understand what type of services that we need to do that. Now, that particular program was beautiful because we recognized that people are still working, so we had to be flexible. We had to have clear standards. As you know, we set out clear outlines. We used real defined Amatrol, nice steps, really good setup of learning, so that somebody could either be active and almost coming out but get this skill, or transitioning through, and we had the flexibility to do it. But at the same time, we recognized that they were recently in the military, and that assimilation part, that part of being used to being in a team and working in a cohort and having those things, that's an important part of our veterans office. So tying it into the work that we do with all students that way, and recognizing they needed that, I think that's what makes those types of programs successful. And really defining. And if you take a soldier or someone that's right out of the military, they know that in their training there's really defined, this is the skill, this is the competency, this is what I need to check off that I'm prepared for it, right? And this was a really nice defined, if you do this, and this, we can get you this credential. And I will tell you, military people like to see that, because that's what they're used to, right? And so this gave a really nice program to be able to do that. And we were delighted to partner.
And the veterans, as they're transitioning into civilian life, they're coming out of that program with some really valuable skills, whether it's in the area of advanced manufacturing and machining, skills that are in high demand among employers. And I think that's a really, really important aspect of this. I love the way that you characterize the process. Number one, being part of a cohort. And as we all know, I didn't serve in the military, and I've got tremendous respect for people who did. But one of the things we hear is that importance of teamwork, the importance of making sure that everybody has everybody's back, that we're all in this together, that we're on a shared goal, and we're working together to accomplish that goal. And then you get into a technical or community program, and in many ways, there's some commonality. You've got that cohort of students. You're going through that shared experience with other students. You're going through that prescriptive, in this case, Operation Next prescriptive set of standards and requirements that you're accustomed to meeting those types of requirements, and now you're being put and placed into that exact environment. And then again, these are folks that, just for our audience, were in their final 6 months of military service, and so they're still active duty as they're going through the training program, but they also have this opportunity to earn these skills and learn these skills that are going to be valuable when they get out. The final point you made, Roger, which I think is really important, is this whole idea of having really flexible learning, and having that system be flexible to meet that student, to meet that learner where they are. That's important in the military as we're partnering with opportunities for people transitioning into civilian life. It's also important in terms of how we manage our relationship with industrial employers. One of the things we hear from employers when it comes to training is the importance of flexibility, the importance of finding a way to meet that employer where they are. I know this is a core part of what you do at Western. You serve all kinds of employers all over your district. Talk a little bit about how you work with those employers, and maybe some of the non-traditional learners, not a full-time student, but somebody who's a lifelong learner. How does that work?
Well, it's a multi-stage process, but we'll keep it really simple. It's really listening and being there for employers to say, what is it you need? What does it look like? And there's some employers that say, we want your graduates, and I can wait till they're done, and I will take them, and we're going to give them an amazing opportunity and job. And they do. And we've done that for 100 years. But I think what we're seeing over the last 5 years, and certainly going into the next 10 years, is they're saying, I've got to hire someone that's not quite ready yet, because I need somebody. How will you help us on the way? How will you add to that journey? And so I think what's really evolving inside of that relationship is listening to what they need. And sometimes we're helping them develop initial skills, the beginning skills that might be in a program. Sometimes we're helping them take those people that have been there a long time and upskill them, right? And sometimes we're building something brand new, something innovative, helping them go to a direction they haven't been able to go to and looking that way. And so it's really about listening and then building this customized, this model that they need. And we have an entire division in our system that allows us to do that. But that also builds that respect and rapport. It's really great when they can, hire our grads, and we're proud of that. And we have lots of alumni that work in our different areas. That's wonderful. But the value today, of knowing that we sometimes cannot get enough skilled people to apply, and I might have to hire someone not quite ready, then we are their solution to help them, bring them to the level so that they are at a higher confidence so they can start to perform and be a stronger member of that team. And I feel really good about that work we're doing. It's growing astronomically.
Growing for sure and for good reason. You're delivering on the promises that you're making to those employers, and they also have a real serious need. It's been a long time since I've heard an employer say, you know what, I just have too many skilled people. I don't know what I'm going to do with all these people. We don't hear that. In fact, we hear exactly the opposite, which is, where am I going to find the people that are necessary to help fuel the growth of my organization? And the truth is that we do have to be much more creative in terms of how we deliver learning to that group of people. It has to be more flexible. To your point, we can't necessarily take somebody out of the workforce for a year, 2 years, whatever that is, and get them to the point where we need them in order to be successful at a high level in manufacturing. Sometimes it has to be that hybrid version where somebody is already working and we find a way to partner with that employer to say, look, we're going to have somebody add value for you today, but we're also going to train that person over time so that as their skills grow, they can add even more value. I think the other aspect of this is, as we think about the future of the American workforce and changing face of technology, you and I have had so many conversations along with some members of your great team about how manufacturing technology is evolving into this world of Industry 4.0, robotics, automation, and there's nobody more on the forefront of some of those changes than is Western Technical College. That's important to our employers as well. They've got to figure out how they've got this incumbent workforce, people that have been working in manufacturing maybe 5, 10, 15, 25 years. Well, guess what? The world of manufacturing is going to look a lot different 10 years from now than it is now. So it's not just about how do we find that next generation of the workforce, people maybe in middle school, high school, military service, and so on. How do we find that group of individuals who are already in the workforce and get them upskilled to a world of advanced manufacturing that's going to look a lot different? I know you're engaged in a lot of that. Reflect a little bit, if you would, Roger, on the changing face of the workforce, the type of competencies that you're seeing, whether the demand for this type of training for lifelong learning among manufacturing employers and employees is changing. Tell us about that.
I also would say I'd add delivery to that, because the way delivery is continues to look different inside of it. So it's when you make commitments to an industry and you have to go there with them, but you have to be able to stay with them so that you're helping them. What we would have offered even in 2010 for advanced manufacturing, looks different than what it was in 2000, 1990, 1980. It just keeps evolving, but it seems to be evolving, more and more rapidly. So you have to have a commitment to grow, to have a faculty that's committed to continue to grow. You have to have a commitment to the equipment that it takes to do it, the right training equipment to help build the competencies and the skills. And then I'll say portability, because right now we have to meet what you're talking about is sometimes they'll come to you, and sometimes today we must go to them. And so when we look at training and development now, I can bring a cohort in, say, to upskill PLC training, and that may work for some employers, where another side of our district might say, I have 18 people, but can you come to us? And what type of portability do you have to come to them? And that might have to be at 6:00 at night, right? So it's some face-to-face and some online, and then you have to have the right equipment in the right place. Training and development looks a lot different today to be able to get there. And I think the piece that you've been passionate about and have helped us an awful lot on is not only just equipment in robotics, it starts to say, what does it mean in data and the data streaming to move things forward in the IoT, and how are those data structures changing how we look at everything? And it's just nothing compared to 5 years ago or to 10 years ago. And so we're in a constant learning commitment ourselves to keep going with our employers and listening. So I guess I would answer by saying, our programs have to evolve, but just as important as our programs have to evolve, our BIS training, our customized training has to keep listening so that it stays right with the pace of a given employer. I'll end that question by saying you have some employers that are at the highest level of integration, automation. They're just light years ahead because they're a multinational business. And the next place is a really great machine shop that's amazing, that is trying to automate their very first process. And the skill level between them, we've got to be able to serve both, right? And I'm just passionate about us figuring that out and being there for them. And so that go back to that listening piece, and then being able to deliver for that first time person, their first PLC, their first you scale a robot or whatever their piece of equipment is that they're trying to engineer to do that, versus helping the multinational. All of it matters, and it's pretty exciting to me.
Very exciting indeed. And it's almost as though we need to meet this need for lifelong learning with lifelong evolution in the world of how we deliver education. I'm glad you began that last answer with this whole idea of delivery. Is we work with industrial employers, we're hearing the same thing that you are. It's, what comes first in manufacturing? What comes first in manufacturing? Employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, making sure that we are delivering quality product, that we don't have quality issues, machine uptime, on-time delivery, innovation in manufacturing processes. That's where they're focused, and that's where they should be focused. A lot of times, this whole idea of lifelong learning or of upskilling our incumbent workforce, it's important, not urgent. We know we have to do it. We know it's important, but it can wait till tomorrow if we're facing an emergency. And so I think that element of flexibility in terms of how we deliver that learning is becoming increasingly important. And certainly you've responded to that. The other aspect of this is, as you mentioned, meeting employers where they are. If I've got a Fortune 500 company that's investing, millions, if not tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in their Industry 4.0 transformation, they probably got it figured out. They've got people on staff that are leading that transformation. They've got a defined strategy around it. But we all know that the world of manufacturing here in the United States is heavily weighted toward those small to mid-sized businesses that are just focusing on getting through the day, getting through the week, taking care of customers. And a lot of times this evolution in technology becomes the afterthought in the same way that training does. And that's where I've been a huge advocate, especially for our technical and community colleges, that in as much as they need to be responsive to the needs of industry, there are certain areas in which they must lead their industrial employers into the future. And I think identifying these opportunities in the world of technology as you have, and then helping those industrial employers make that transition, really important. You touched, Roger, on a couple aspects of this and a couple aspects of what our business and industry or our workforce development elements of a technical or community college must be doing as this world of work evolves and the world of training evolves. Is there other advice that you might have for somebody that's working in that part of a community college or a technical college in terms of how they need to think differently for the future of training?
As you look at the vast amount of multinational to small 5-person shop, right? And you're trying to serve them all. Where we bring advisory groups together and they're so diverse. But in the end, what is our core skills that we have to have, baseline skills, if it's in a program? And then what can we develop when they're out on the job? And then the other side is, from those core skills, what can we do in bits and parts? And then how can those bits and parts come back together for that person that wants to ladder that back into a degree? It's forcing us as an educational institution to really get good at chunking, really good at defining exactly how this ties to this learning objective and this competency, so that there is a true checkoff that this is a skill that's there, so that if they have that one, no matter where they're at in their continuum, and now they want to get a degree in it, I can help them do that and I can bring them in. So I will just say there's a transition across education now that degrees are important, but they're not everything. There's a skill level that they want to get this done, but that person, if they want a degree, I want to be able to be there for them, and so that they don't have to retake stuff, so that we're smart of it. It's defined. I can demonstrate this. And so our curriculum is much more evolved to be really clear what is expected, what's there and defined. And I think that's how we're serving a lot more employers. We listen to them, we give it to them, but we figured out something, we call it credit for prior learning, but it's essentially saying what you learned in 18 different modules as an employee counts. And when you're ready to get an automation certificate or an automation degree or an electromechanical degree, we're going to take all that experience and we're going to value that. And we're going to help you so that that becomes a degree for you. And there's a lot more portability across multiple industries when you do it that way and you allow them to go. And we're getting pretty good at it, right? We're better than we were 10 years ago at that. And I think that is the wave of the future. Us helping people chunk and do the bit pieces of learning they need that's important for them, and get the competencies up, so then we can come together and package it however that student needs it later, if that makes sense, Matt.
It makes perfect sense. And in fact, to reflect a little more on my time in manufacturing, we didn't care how much time somebody spent in a classroom. I didn't care how much time they spent in a lab. I mean, obviously those are all means to an end, but at the end of the day, and really at the beginning of the day, what was important was what they were able to do and what they knew and how they could add value to our business when they walked in the door, regardless of how they got there. And I think your whole discussion around competency-based learning, around how do we chunk up the learning environment, how do we define what the outcomes are, how do we help learners who learn a lot of different ways get those outcomes instilled in themselves in the most efficient way so that we can get them into the workforce adding value. They have a more efficient educational experience. Certainly, our employers, if they're upskilling their incumbent workforce, they have a more efficient experience. And in the future of education and some of the trends that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, I think figuring out a way to deliver that learning, chunking it up, and making it as efficient as possible is absolutely the future of education and of higher education, especially. And it sounds like you're exactly on that track. The other track that you're on that I know you're doing as well as anybody is building these relationships with amazing employers, industrial employers, and others in your district. And I want to talk about that a little bit. As I walk through your labs, as I walk through your facilities, you see a lot of company logos, not just on equipment, but on the wall. You see them supporting the great work that you're doing. You see them giving time, equipment, and in many cases, treasure toward the programs that you're implementing, which I think is an attestation to the great work you're doing and the confidence that they have in you. So I'll leave it to you to highlight if you have any of the employers, the types of employers that you've been partnering with, Roger. But I think for our audience, and especially those that are in leadership positions in higher education, you're doing this again as well as anybody, trying to find these opportunities to leverage relationships and build partnerships with employers across the realm of every single economic space in which you're in. If you had a few pieces of advice for somebody that is trying to figure out how to build even stronger relationships with the employers in their district, what would that be?
Well, there's certainly win-wins. I think employers are. I used to look at them as they were pretty tunnel vision, but I don't know that that was true. I think I made a lot of assumptions. I think most of the employers are really focused on their industry, and when we work with them, they care about helping their whole industry. In the end, they're going to have some metrics. What did this do for my company? Did I actually get to hire more? Did more people come to me? But what I made was some early assumptions that you're only going to want to help your place, and I can't just guarantee you a certain employee. And that was the wrong mindset. I had to really shift my mindset, if that makes sense. I had to come back and say, no, you're actually in it for agriculture, or you're in it for advanced manufacturing, or you're really in it for this area of healthcare. And yeah, you hope by doing this or helping the college or being a part of this, that it brings more employees to you because you get to highlight. So one of the things that just stands out to me that we did because of this thought process that they care about the industry is we started to do employer spotlights. And it was, it sounds so simple, but we didn't do it for so long. And what we're doing is we bring employers in, we give this space, we promote it across the whole campus. And one employer might have 5 different programs that they could recruit from, or 20. If they're a Quick Trip, for example, or a Nationally, one of these multinational large companies, they might hire from 25. You give them a chance to come in, you highlight them, and they're not tunnel visioned. They're there to talk about how I want to help all of manufacturing and why you want to work for a company that's going this way and how they're going to help you grow. That's what the Quick Trips do. But then the small shops actually come in as well. And they come in and it might be Pellinger Electric, a small electric company, but a really good person. And they want to hire electricians, but they also might need an accounting person. And what I found is when they talk and want to partner, whether that be about scholarships or equipment, they never say, I want this just for me or my access. I demand free access because I gave you these robots. They say, we want to see all of manufacturing grow. We want these beds to help all of your healthcare programs. That's why we're giving them to you. These are the highest level beds we give you, and that's what partners do. And when I learned that actually their heart is generally for the whole industry, but yeah, they got to worry about their bottom line. They have some things they care about. Then I address both things when I'm able to partner and speak with them to say, let's talk about your entire field. And my recommendation was say, look at them broadly. They truly are there to help their industry. Talk to them as an industry specialist. And then, yeah, share the things that will individually help their organization. But when you build partnerships, you help them help their entire field. And they're passionate about it.
think that's great advice, not just for educators, but also for industrial employers. And I will tell you again, as somebody, and not just industrial employers, but to your point, healthcare and distribution and logistics and every single aspect of the economy. One of the mistakes I think I made when I initially tried to build relationships with our local technical colleges when I was in manufacturing is you really do go in there a little bit selfishly. You go in and you're like, I need to fill these positions. Your job as the community college is to create talent. How do I leverage that relationship so that I can get people in front of CNC machines, in front of metal fabrication equipment, what have you? And that's really, I think, where a lot of folks maybe start out. And on the flip side of it, maybe a lot of educators start out and say, well, how do I get that company to, pay for fill in the blank or to help support whatever it is that I'm trying to do to grow my institution? And I think when you get those people around the table, to your point, you really start to understand each other. That look, the educators aren't just trying to dig into the pocket of the employer. They're really trying to figure out how to build a partnership, how to better the entire community. And we look at it the same way from the industrial employer standpoint or the employer standpoint in general. They're really trying to figure out, once they understand how all of this works, they understand the benefit of having a vibrant economy. They understand the incredible value that a technical or community college can bring to their environment and to their community. And it's not just maybe they were just focusing on the welding department because that's what they do. But then you walk down the hall and you see all the public safety and all the healthcare and all of the certainly the advanced manufacturing, but all the different ways in which a technical community college touches the community. And you really do realize that a rising tide lifts all ships. And this really is about how we do something great for our community. You mentioned Ashley Furniture. I know we both share a friend in Ron Wanek, the founder and chairman of that great organization. And I've heard Mr. Wanek talk many, many times about how a region is either a net exporter or a net importer. We think about the trade deficit nationally, but regions can have that as well. And if we can find a way to be a destination for talent, if we can find a way to be a destination for tourism, if we can find a way to be a destination for manufacturers that are expanding, that is how we grow the overall economy. And so many of them are committed to that. And so many educators are committed to that and to looking to new ways of doing this. This is going to be really important, I think, as we think about the future of higher education. We reflect often here on the Tech Ed podcast about back in the 2008 era, give or take, the Great Recession, as we call it, the birth rate here in the United States, cratered in a lot of ways. We were just having fewer children. And now here we are, 15 years later, and those children are now the ones that are considering what they're going to do post-secondary, and there's way fewer of them than there used to be. We call that the enrollment cliff, is kind of the key word for it, or keywords in the world of higher education. So we know that you're going to be recruiting from a smaller group of students here in the coming years. It's going to require technical and community colleges to be even more creative in how they morph their programs, how they prepare for that smaller group of students, how they become an attractive destination for that smaller group of students. What are the things that Western is doing or planning to do in the wake of this changing demographic?
Yeah, it is something I'm sure that every college in the country talks about and has to think about. I think we just have had great actions, direct actions in it. Now, you can look at K-12 and you can say, well, K-12 is going down, so let's not put all our eggs in that basket. But the truth is, I think you double down to that audience, because I personally feel we made some mistakes in the 1980s and 90s, and I think we forgot to tell our high school students how great a jobs we have in trades, in technology, healthcare. I think we all created some illusion that a 4-year degree was the only degree, and I have one. I mean, they're valuable. I'm not taking them away, but we forgot to tell them how great of jobs they can get with 1 year and 2 year. And I think that was something that was there. So we have kind of really worked to rekindle our relationship with superintendents and principals about saying what jobs are in your community. And we happen to fill almost all of those, and we can get them on that path. And I will say, over the last 5 years, we have transitioned into a place where we have so much more impact on our K-12s than we had before. So while they're smaller, we're getting a higher percentage of them. We're doing it through a lot of different ways. Yeah, we're just starting now that whole, what do you do at middle school? How do you get them interested in manufacturing job? How do you get them to touch feel, explore, tape measures, robots. How do you do that? That's one. You got to know that it's even a possibility. That's one good way. The other way that I'm passionate about is transcripted credit, is saying, let's take your experiences while you're at the high school and give you credit for them. And I know you've talked about that on here, but let me just tell you, Western, if we go back to 2012, we had 4 transcripted credits in 2012. If you go to last year, we had 20,000 transcripted credit in our region. That was 5,000 unduplicated students that got credit at our college out of our high schools that could then transfer, assimilate, and move into these better jobs because now the awareness is higher, right? And so that's taxpayers paying for those credits one time. It's efficient. It's a dollar usage thing that's really good, but it also gave them direct competencies in skills that I think lead to amazing jobs. And so we're looking at K-12 differently. No doubt about it. Let's give them experience and show them. Let's fix what we did in the 80s and 90s and tell them about their great jobs. And then the other side is you got to be there for adults. That's back to flexibility. That's back to Zoom. That's back to having some things that are face-to-face and some online and some blended of that mixture to say you're adult working students. You're a single parent. Right? And that's harder value proposition for you. So how do we create an environment so you can get there? And so we've been our own worst enemy, but we had the luxury of volume. And at this point, we don't have the same luxury of volume. I think you're talking about declining enrollments and declining interest in higher ed. And so how do we best serve by showing that value proposition like every other business has to do to make sure their goods and services are bought and sold? And so we want to add that value proposition by being there in a better way, in the way that serves them in their future and ultimately gets more people working for our employers.
I was a product of that environment in the 80s, particularly in my case, and going through secondary education and the lack of career awareness, maybe a stigma existing around technical education. At least we had it back then, and then we went through this period of time where a lot of high schools were getting away from having any technical education. And you're exactly right. We talk all the time on this podcast about the fact that and this is proven, the number one influencer of a young person's career pathway is what are their own interests and experiences in middle school and high school, and nothing else is even close. And so without having that exposure in middle school and high school, they don't even know some of these great career opportunities exist. I'm going to tell you I love numbers. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a data guy. To hear you say that, whatever, 11 years ago, you had 4 transcripted credits, and now here 11 years later, you're at 20,000. I mean, that is incredible growth. And it really speaks to students that are learning these competencies and gaining these certifications and earning these credits while they're in high school or maybe learning them somewhere else and having credit for that. That's accelerating their post-secondary education because they're arriving there with a head start, a huge head start, but it's also generating that incredible interest. And I'm fascinated by that number that you just shared. Certainly the things like reaching out to K-12 and building those more solid relationships, reaching out to adult and lifelong learners and building those relationships. I'm a believer actually that our technical and community colleges are actually in a pretty good space despite this enrollment cliff, in large part because there are changing views of higher education. And that's been proven as well. Survey after survey will tell you that students will now answer a survey question that says, is a certification and a technical diploma enough to get a good job? And almost all of them, well over 3/4, will say the answer to that question is yes, but they have to get that technical diploma. They have to get that associate's degree. They have to get that certification somewhere. And I think that bodes really well for those technical and community colleges that are willing to morph their models a little bit. And as we think about that pathway, we think about the education pathway from middle school to high school to technical or community college or to the military or direct to workforce or what have you. You have an interesting career pathway and an interesting education pathway in as much as you've got the big doctor letters in front of your name now. You've obviously carried your education a long way. That journey started, at least toward higher education, in a community college. And so I'd like for you, if you wouldn't mind, just to tell us a little bit about that experience being a community college student yourself and how that gives you the type of credibility you need as a college president when you're sitting down with students, you're sitting down with parents and talking about the value of the kinds of degrees and technical diplomas and other learning opportunities that you're offering there at Western.
I was a kind of a lost junior, didn't know what I wanted to do. And they put me on a bus and sent me to the technical college for a tour. And the only reason I got on it is because we're going to go to McDonald's. And at the time, that was a big deal, right? And so, I got there and I accidentally get to this place and I was just, my eyes just went, wow. And I got interested and I left there going, I'm going to this technical college, right? It's in the state, it's in our system. I'm doing this. And I got home and I didn't have direction. I didn't have a decision. And I came back really going, this is what I'm doing. And then, I got around it and everybody at the high school helped me get signed up and do it. And pretty soon I was in, and absolutely, I didn't know where I was going and I turned into loving it. And that's where I found out, I'm actually a pretty smart guy, right? I have the ability to learn. I have the ability to grow. I have the ability to choose a career field and to set my own destination. And so that helped me. I got the 2-year degree, got some military, came back, got the 4-year, and then continued on like you're talking about. But it honestly was because it was good people around me that were making suggestions to me on exploring and getting there, and people that believe in you and tell you. And so we know when we sell a course or a credit, we're selling some confidence. But often at the technical college system, we're selling a belief in oneself that you can do this and you can get it. And right now, at the end of this is $50, $60, $70, $80,000 jobs right out of here. Right. And so the value proposition is so high. If we get in front of the right office and tell them you can do this, you can believe in yourself. And that works really well with adults that are looking for a new choice. It also works good with young people. They have to know and believe and have that experience, like you said. So for me, it was great people that trusted and believed in me. And I took the risk and went. And then I just fell in love with that hands-on learning. And I went, and it is what brought me back. I was a high school teacher, loved it. I had a chance to go back and teach at that technical college again, because my passion when I was there, and then it just led to a career, obviously, of supporting that workforce work that was there. But good people believe and help you. And we try to do that today, is build up people to say, this is a good place for you. And it does work.
And you think about just the vast number of options that people have in our technical and community colleges. I had a aha moment similar to yours. When I was in school and when I was in high school, whenever it was 30, 40 years ago, the whole idea was, you're going to go on to a 4-year university. That was instilled in your brain. They pushed it. And that was the path I ended up going on. And then I was taking a first responder course, actually. I was a lifeguard and we had to get 40, 80 hours of first aid training, something like that. And that training took place at our local technical college. And so I enrolled in the course there and took it. And that was my aha moment, where you're walking by all these programs, welding program, CNC program, advanced manufacturing program, or maybe at that time, not so advanced manufacturing program, but certainly all the aspects of manufacturing. There was a barber school at that particular technical college. Then, of course, all of the healthcare, the EMTs, the CNA programs. I mean, it really is a microcosm of America. And suddenly you start to realize that without our technical and community colleges, we really don't have an America. We don't have a United States as we know it. We don't have any of the amazing services, any of the amazing opportunities that all of us enjoy day in and day out. It really is absolutely part of the fabric of our great country. And where would we be without our technical and community colleges reaching so many different populations? We've talked about veterans populations. We've talked about working with incumbent workers and industrial employers. We've talked about your traditional students. And I know you reach a wide range of folks that are coming from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of life situations, all of them with the rest of their life entirely in front of them. Talk a little bit about some of the other populations that you have the opportunity to add value for.
Thank you for the opportunity, because I think this question is an opportunity that our 2-year system needs to share, because we are there for all students. And one of the proudest things that we are about our whole system is that we're open access. So we're there to try to lift people up. We are there to actually help the working population. We're here to help the percentage of people in the workforce, right? And so what are you talking about? We're talking about justice-involved students. We have programs at the county jails. We have programs at 2 state prisons that are giving life skills and job skills. And we know we impact recidivism rates when we give those skills. At the heart of these people, they want to be successful, right? But when they don't have any skills to go back there, they tend to go back into the same couch, the same neighborhood, the same situation. But when they get those skills, they have hope and they feel it and they go and change their lives. So that's one important population that I think is incredible. I think the other one that we serve that'll just, when you talk about numbers that blow you away, Western last year graduated 330 GED HSED students. 330. Now, who would think that's one district, right? And you think, well, doesn't everybody have a high school diploma? They don't. And it's a huge group of people that are underserved, underskilled, and we can help them on their path, right? So when we get 330 of those people, which by the way might be 17, but they might be 48, they might be 61, and they still want to work. That changes their trajectory. And we right now are leading the state. We transfer about 45% of those people into diplomas and associate degrees. And so that work is a great audience that helps all people. It gets them into a better job in the workforce, right? Which is less taxpayer. It's that tax user to taxpayer that I feel really, really passionate about. And I just think as a whole, our system, we can help every graduate. I can challenge a valedictorian, and then I can help some of the students that are struggling because our access services are amazing. The help that we provide is like no other. It is very safe and comfortable to ask for help. So first generation college students, those that don't necessarily have higher education literacy, right? They don't even know what a GPA is when they get here. But that doesn't matter to us. We get there, we help them. We just show them what a competency completion is, and now they can get to an amazing job. That's changing the lives of students and growing our communities, which is our mission, right? So that's who we are. So we serve from privilege to least privilege. And what I mean by that is just those that have the money to pay for their college or those that have to borrow. And I tell people all the time, if you come into a 1-year or a 2-year degree, and even if you have to borrow all of it, if you get on it and you finish it in 1 or 2 years, you're going to owe $5,000 or $10,000, but you're going to have a job for $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000, and you can make a student loan payment. When that's reversed, right? When your job's going to come out and it's going to pay you $20,000 and you owe $80,000, $100,000, there's no economics in that, right? Our economics are on the right side. So helping those people lift themselves out, even if they have to borrow, we have a good student loan system. They can make that payment because we're going to put them in a job at a really good life-sustaining wage. And I feel good about that for all those audiences you're talking about.
As well, you should, lifting those people up in so many different communities, so many different groups that you're meeting. I've employed justice involved people, lots of them in the past, and not every single one of them worked out, but I can tell you a lot of them did. And we were a better employer for having them on our team, and they had a way better chance at winning at life for having that employment, having those skills, and having that opportunity. One of my favorite stories to tell, I had dozens of aunts and uncles. Both of my parents were from really big families. But one of my favorite aunts actually passed away last November. She earned her GED. I think she was probably 95 when she passed away, give or take, mid-90s. She earned her GED a little over 20 years ago. So here you have somebody who was well into her 70s, always wanted a high school diploma, had an 8th grade education. That's just still all the further you went back then. Spent her entire life raising a family on a farm, and then went back and got her GED somewhere in her mid 70s. I just absolutely love that story because it really is. It demonstrates the importance of being a lifelong learner, and it also demonstrates just that power and that pride that goes along with knowing that you accomplished something, even if it was something like 60 years after you might have otherwise done it. So that's what our technical and community colleges are doing day in and day out, whether you're somebody coming right out of high school, maybe even still a high school student in many cases, all the way to late in life. The technical and community colleges are there for them. I know that's a huge passion of yours, to listen to you talk about hope, to listen to you talk about believing in yourself and those values that Western and others instill in the next generation of learners and the next generation of the workforce. So very, very important. So we're now, both of us, into the next generation, or maybe a generation later of learners. But I love looking back in time a little bit with our guests here on the Tech Ed podcast, thinking back to maybe you were that 15-year-old kid. If you had one opportunity to go back in time, Roger, and give that individual, that young Roger Stanford, one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
I would say you got to take the leap and ask for help. That's what stands out for me. I thought there was a point of being, too good to ask for help, like embarrassed to ask for help, like worried to ask for help, like people are going to judge you as you ask for help. And being a part of a college that has normalized asking for help, saying everybody needs help with something at some time, and that we have open questions are wide open. If I was 15 again and I realized that, I would have been asking questions so much earlier. But because I assumed I was supposed to have it all figured out, and I didn't. And I was worried to ask, and nobody really told me it was okay to ask. I'm telling you, ask and then take a leap. Trust that people around you are going to help you and lift you up, because that's what we are doing. I think our K-12 people love their students and they want to get them to the next one. But if the person stays quiet and hit around the corner, you can't reach the person that doesn't, ask for it. So ask for it. And that's what I wish I would have done. I wish I would have sought that out a little bit sooner. I think I could have moved on my career a little bit faster, but I'm proud of what I've done. But that would be my advice. Ask for help.
Take the leap, take a risk, because we never know what we won't accomplish unless we give it a shot, and we try and figure out how we can take a little bit of risk in life, and then along the way ask for help. And I can just tell you, as someone that gets my fair share of people that come in and say, hey, can you help me think about my career? Can you help me buy a business? I never say no to somebody that wants a little bit of help. And I think most people are in exactly the same boat. You don't realize that there's so many people around that are not only willing to help you, but want to help you and will feel good about themselves if they have an opportunity to help you along your career pathway. So certainly take that risk. Always ask for help. I knew it wasn't a risk in bringing Roger Stanford onto the Tech Ed podcast, because we've known each other forever, and I knew you were going to be a great guest, and you have been. Dr. Roger Stanford, president of Western Technical College. Just want to take this one last opportunity to thank you so much for being with us and for taking the time to talk about all the great things you're doing at Western.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. If you haven't already, subscribe, leave a review, and if you liked this episode, share it with a friend. New episodes launch every Tuesday, so listen in next week.